And okay, cool. So for anybody watching this recording, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Patrick Spychalski on the call today. For anyone who doesn't know him, because they've been living under a rock, he is one of the main guys behind Clay, or at least that's no, not actually building it, but he's one of the main names that everyone knows of. And he built the Kiln, and recently he was acquired by 2X. And in this call, we're going to figure out for how much. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's really cool success story. And correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but you only actually got into Clay, what, 2.5 years ago?
Um, what is it, 2026 now? I got into it like technically probably like 4 years ago, but then
Okay.
didn't start the agency until two and a half years ago or so. So like the agency 2.5 years, but I started working at Clay like 4 years ago.
Okay, very cool. And how did that go? So you worked there as an intern? How did that even come about? Because you're a young guy. Well, how did
Yeah,
that even
so
happen?
first want to, note I'm not the person behind the majority of Clay. I mean, Clay's,
Yeah,
its own
I
thing.
know.
If I was, I'd be a lot richer, I'm sure. But the I got into Clay pretty much just through complete chance, like serendipitous, like events occurring. I moved to New York right after I graduated college, and my roommate Matt was their first marketing hire, and he was doing a lot. I mean, had a lot of, his job was pretty arduous. He was the only person doing anything marketing related, so he had to make the whole website, run all the ads, run all the socials, run all the docs, and he was just super overwhelmed with work. And I had, prior to moving in with him, started a company and scaled it to like it was like an iOS app, and I'd scaled it to like half.
Mhm.
I guess at the time probably 300,000 users. And I had
Very
so I
cool.
had and it was all through organic marketing. And so he knew this obviously about me, and he was like, "Hey, obviously you have like a marketing background. You grew this company. It did pretty well. Like, can I, bring you on to Clay to help out?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds good." Like the app wasn't making absurd amounts of money, so I was like, I still got to pay rent in New York, and I want to have some extra spending
Yeah.
money. So started working at Clay as a result. And I was essentially his intern. Like he would just send me off to go do things. So like I created like the initial Clay docs, so like all the integration docs, which they've obviously made much better ones now, but I made those initially, and then started running after a few months there, started running their YouTube and LinkedIn channels. Just because the co-founder of Varun was like, the the articles I was writing for their website, I guess, were good enough to get me promoted to like content manager, and then I eventually started just running their LinkedIn and YouTube channels.
Very cool. I guess they were good enough, he says.
I
Of course
mean,
they were.
at the time it was kind of you didn't really know the results of your work because Cleo's at like zero. I think they were less than a
Yeah.
million in ARR when I joined. Like they were a very, very small company. I was like their 10th person probably. And so you kind of just threw stuff at the wall to see if it like stuck or not. It was like, I had very little idea as to whether anything was actually creating impact, but I was showing up every day and working hard. And I guess that's maybe what Varun saw. I don't know.
So that's interesting. As you're, well, I mean, the kiln is only 2.5 years old, but you got to see Clay grow while you were there. It wasn't just that you kind of joined, built a successful agency. You were actually a big. I, I want to be careful saying a big part of that because I understand that Varun and all these other people also had a huge part to play. But just generally speaking, you got to see it kind of grow in the
Yeah.
space. It's quite
Yeah, that
cool.
was honestly one of the coolest parts of this whole experience is like Clay's a $5 billion company now. When I joined, they had pretty much zero revenue, so seeing that like progression and obviously just being kind of constantly inspired by, Varun and Kareem and being able to see them, develop as leaders and build this incredible company and obviously get like, generationally wealthy in the process has been a pretty cool thing to see. And yeah, I think it's been awesome to just see from like a 0 to 100, like the blueprint of how a tech startup should be run. And it's been pretty awesome. So that's honestly been one of the coolest parts of the whole experience, just seeing that.
Yeah. And then, so how did the whole agency thing come about? When did that happen?
Yeah, it was pretty random, honestly. So like I had not been thinking about starting a Clay agency at all when I was working at Clay. Like I never crossed my mind. And I was making YouTube videos and LinkedIn content. And I even had a few like startup founders come to me and say, I've seen your YouTube videos. I love the content. Can I hire you to like make clay tables for me? But I was
Hmm.
super fixated at the time on opening like a vintage clothing store in New York. So I did not care about doing clay tables for people. Like that was not even in my purview. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm focusing on this thing. And I'm doing clay as just like a means to an end, essentially. And I was talking to Matthew Kwan, who was like a very early clay employee as well in the office one day. And he was like, I was telling him like, yeah, people keep reaching out to me to like build clay tables for them. Like, and I'm not really interested in doing it. And he was like, "Dude, do you know how much they're getting paid?" And I was like, "No, like probably what, like $30 an hour, $40 an hour." And he's like, "No, they're getting paid like $300 an hour." And I was like, "What? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's so much more than I'm getting paid at clay. I should 100% just like do that." So I got on a call with a guy, and he's like, "I want this clay table built." And it was a pretty easy one, like one that like would probably only take me like a couple hours. And he was like, "How much would it cost to build it?" And I was like, "I think like 500, $600." And he was immediately like, "Yes, let's do it." And I was like, "What the heck? Like, this is crazy." And then um, I started the agency obviously shortly thereafter. And it wasn't like an agency when I started it. It was just like me freelancing and taking on a bunch of clients, just like doing work for them while also working at Clay.
Okay,
And then eventually it became an agency when I started like hiring people down the line.
very cool. And then the majority of the people that you were working with, especially at the start, was it mainly bigger enterprise companies, or was like I know in my space there's a lot of outbound companies that are using Clay. It's one of the biggest tools in their tech stack now. Was it outbound agencies that you're working with, or was it just outbound motions? What was it?
It was a lot of early stage tech companies who wanted to run an automated outbound motion in the beginning. So
Okay.
like, startups who, didn't have a ton of budget and like I've just found that I think a lot of the early adopters of the tools like, Clay, whatever, like N8N, Lovable, it's mostly startup companies that are adopting these in the beginning. And so that's who was using Clay at the time. And yeah, it was interesting like progressing up to enterprise, obviously, because when you're working with startups, they have super tight budgets. They're not willing to pay a lot of money for services, and they're
Yeah.
usually spending like the very little funding they have partially on you. So they're just like hounding you on a daily basis about the work you're doing. And we very quickly realized like we should probably just go up to enterprise when the opportunity presents itself, and eventually Clay grew to the point where we could work with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That it is interesting. The other side of it is when you're working with these smaller startups. Like for example, I'm not sure were you actually working with Lovable and N8N when they were implementing Clay? That would be fantastic. You get to see the company grow with it.
Yeah, I mean, not N8N. I mean, I don't think N8N uses Clay probably. I feel like they're like direct competitors. They would probably be beefing, but like, yeah, when Lovable started, collaborating with Clay, I was pretty close to like the Lovable team when it was happening. I wouldn't say like super close, but I knew their head of enterprise sales and like met the founder, and they're great. They're a really great team.
Cool. And then, so when did you make that decision to move up to enterprise, and what did you change about the positioning? Was it still the exact same thing? Just come to me and I'll build whatever you need, or surely there was a bit of a change there?
Yeah, I think there's like a few factors that lead to eventually going enterprise. It's not something you can just decide to do when you start an agency. Like a
Yeah.
lot of enterprise companies require a fair bit of case studies. They want to see that other enterprise companies have worked with them. So you have to kind of build your way up to that point. Obviously, every agency owner would work in enterprise immediately if they could. At least that would be my assumption because they pay a lot better. They're usually a lot more chill clients. There's longer contract terms, and like overall it's just a more sustainable model generally than working with startups. And so the first thing we had to do was build kind of a list of case studies with companies that these enterprise businesses had at least heard of. And this was
Mm.
like very strategic in the beginning, actually, where I would sign logos that specifically I knew that people had heard of, even if they weren't in the enterprise yet. So like one of the first that came to mind was there was a startup in New York. I think they still exist and they're doing really well, but called Anti Metal. And Anti Metal was like pretty known in like the tech startup community. And so I did some work with them, and my deal with them was you don't need to pay me a thing. Just I'm gonna do work for you, and I would love to have a great case study if it goes well. And then
Yeah.
that was the first one, and then we ended up signing, and it's so annoying. It's a one company we have on NDA, so I can't say what it is, but it's a very large agency run by somebody you've 100% heard of. And that was the next agency that, or like next large client that we signed. And until that NDA was signed, I was name dropping them constantly in all of our sales calls. And so obviously that, we started using that. And then it kind of just started snowballing where we were working with more and more notable companies over time. And it got to the point where like, now we have like clients like Notion and Zoom and these like really large businesses. And we were able to just pitch to these larger companies, hey, like we've worked with, like one of our early big clients was Windsurf. We started working with Windsurf before they were what they are today. And so like we had like a year of working with Windsurf that we were able to pitch to like, the Notions of the world and be like, look what we did for Windsurf. Obviously, Notion looks up to Windsurf in a way because there's this fast growing AI company. And yeah, it was able to just progress from that. So you have to build your way up, work with a lot of big companies, and just get great testimonials. And I think like once you develop some degree of reputation and enterprise infrastructure, you can start working with them. It's also just worth noting most of these companies, especially in the enterprise scale, are really scared to work with like one, two, three-person businesses because they're afraid that if you're building some infrastructure for them and then the next day you decide like this isn't worth it, I'm leaving, like they have nothing anymore. Like they're pretty much just left holding the bag. So they do want to work with like companies that have some sort of like employee structure as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed I've started moving up market myself for my own agency. And I'm noticing that as well. Generally, they're actually quite nice to talk to on sales calls. They generally understand what you're talking about, and it's very interesting. But the problem is that there just is that blockade. If you don't have those results to show, and definitely the team thing is definitely a limiting factor as well. It's just a lot harder to work with them. But one thing I was interested in hearing from you was like, were a lot of them already aware of Clay? You were just helping them implement it, or was it more so that you would kind of position yourself as building these systems for them, where it was surface signals or enrich or whatever it was?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the beginning, everybody we worked with knew what Clay was and had a decent idea as to what it could do. And that was just because they
Mhm.
were watching my content on Clay, so they were at least educated to some extent. And I think that's why they were reaching out most of the time. It's like they saw my content, thought it was interesting, reached out. So they had almost a crash course on Clay before they ever talked to us. As the business progressed, we started getting referrals from like private equity firms and venture capital firms, and they would be referring their portcos to us. And then that got to the point where these companies had actually never heard of Clay. And maybe one of somebody like we were partnered with, maybe at like Kleiner Perkins is a big partner of ours, and they have a lot of portfolio companies. And so it's like Kleiner Perkins will connect us to one of their portcos, and then we have to explain to their head of sales what Clay is and like demo what Clay is. And then at that point, you're pitching a lot more kind of results based things and efficiency based things than like we can implement Clay for you because like saying I can implement Clay doesn't mean anything to them. Like they don't even
Yeah.
know what it is or what the value is. And so it's a lot of demoing the tool, showing why it's obviously an incredible tool and why it adds a lot of value. And then also just having somebody who's like connected to them. In this case, maybe like a Kleiner Perkins operating partner or something like who we're really close with. Like, and then he helps kind of like facilitate that connection, and then we eventually work with them. So as time goes on, it's a lot more pitching the value, not the tool. Especially with these large enterprise companies who had never heard of Clay or never used it.
Okay, interesting. So, for example, you would hop on a call with one of these portcos that was introduced to you by one of these PE firms, or venture capitalist firms. And then before the call, I would assume that you try and figure out what kind of a use case or kinds of use cases would make the most sense for them using Clay, and then you just present that to them.
Yeah, so our discovery call process is, I'd say, nothing particularly special. It's really just us trying to figure out what problems the company's facing that can be solved with Clay. And so the first call we have with them, we don't set up a demo or anything. Like we literally just get on a call and we just pester them with a ton of questions about like what's going wrong in their organ. And eventually you can kind of filter down to a few core questions that will almost always have an answer of we're experiencing problems with this. Like, for example, CRM cleanliness. Like no company has a clean CRM. It's
Yeah.
always abysmal, right? So if you ask them, what is the nature of your CRM's cleanliness? You'll probably get an answer of it's trash, right? And then that can foray into a demo of Clay or something. Like, and you can ask about the nature of their outbound motion, like how is it set up? What are SDRs doing on a day to day? What are AEs doing on a day to day? How's pipeline looking? Like you can ask all of these kind of like baseline questions to kind of just distill down to the problem. And then of course there is a set kind of list of solutions that Clay can provide. Like if your BDRs are spending 4 hours a day doing research, it's like, why are they doing that? You can automate all that research with Clay. You can narrow that down to 15 minutes of research, and then you can save them a ton of time. And then here's a workflow that demonstrates this. And then here's 3 clients we've already done this with and results and testimonials, right? And then it becomes pretty clear what the value is. So I'd say like that's kind of the way in which we go about it. If we have a second discovery call, it's often just showing off like some of the workflows that we've built. Maybe we'll have a POC that we've built for them. And then, ideally just kind of getting down to the root of their problem because scoping is really hard in these engagements as well, like figuring out how long
Mhm.
projects are going to take, like the nuances associated with all their tech stack, especially as you go enterprise, it gets really difficult.
Very cool. Just for anyone who has any questions, we'll take questions kind of in and around the half past mark, just halfway through the call, and that way everyone can get a chance. But just with regards to the those calls, then, so let's say, for example, it is, and this is gold, by the way, Patrick. Um, but let's just say that they say that it is the SDR problem, or there's something going wrong there. Do you normally like how do you differentiate between just creating that infrastructure that supports them versus then actually facilitating everything? by helping them with that outbound infrastructure as well, because there is a difference there.
Yeah, so I think there are kind of two facets to discovery. The first is defining what problems they're facing, and then the second is defining the root of the problem that they're facing. And so, like, for example, the first part would be, we're not getting enough leads from our outbound, and this is a major problem. And like, okay, that's a problem and it can be solved, but you don't actually know what's causing it. And so then the second thing is like, is it your email infrastructure that's causing this problem? Is it your copy that's causing this problem? Is it your targeting and list building that's causing this problem? Like, there are several ways that there's several things that could be solving or let's say creating this problem, and you have to kind of distill that
Hmm.
down, and then you're able to pitch a solution. And so I think yeah, a lot of like the discovery should be boiled down to like A, just data collection, and then B, using strategy to figure out exactly what problem they're facing and how to solve it. And then you can pitch the solution quite easily. Like,
Yeah.
if you build enough workflows in Clay, or you use the tooling enough, as a client's describing a problem, oftentimes, like, I don't know, this happens with me, and I feel like it happens with our head of sales and like a lot of other people on our team. Like, the mental map of the Clay workflow you have to build to solve this problem starts materializing in your head, and you're just like, okay, well, like, if they have an email infrastructure problem, we're gonna have to set up this many inboxes, and you can ask some questions about how many people they're reaching out to per day, and then again, it's really just every workflow and everything we build for clients is so custom that it's pretty much just asking them enough questions to where you can build a statement of work and then deliver it to them and then tell them this is how I'm going to
Yeah.
solve your problem. And hopefully it's aligned with what they were thinking.
Yeah, very cool. And then when you're actually executing on these deals, do you, like, let's say for example it is deliverability. You just take it that that's not somebody you're going to work with now, or did you also help them with deliverability and outbound? Like, let's say it didn't actually have much to do with something Clay could solve.
Yeah. So something that I think was pretty integral in building our reputation was turning down clients when they weren't a great fit. And this is
Hmm.
somewhat tough to do in the beginning because obviously, like, any client that has budget and is experiencing a problem that you think you can solve is enticing to bring on to your agency. Um, but to answer your question, if we see a problem that we don't think we can truly in our hearts feel like we can solve, we'll just turn down the client because ultimately it's not worth the headache on your end. It's not worth the waste of money on the client's end, and it's just going to end up ruining your reputation to some extent. So usually, if we have a client, like a great example of this is we have a ton of clients who want to do automated outbound. We've been kind of straying away from automated outbound just because we do a lot better, I think, on like the infrastructure play projects. But Eric Nowoslowski, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, is insanely good at automated outbound. He's so good. It's incredible. His service is great. So like if a client comes to us and wants this done and I don't think we can build it for them, I just say go talk to Eric. And then you've have a great referral partnership with all of your other agencies, and then you're awesome. So you hopefully are making some sort of referral income. In this case, Eric's just my friend, so I'm sending him leads. But like in many cases, you can make a referral deal, and then B, you're now just gaining a great reputation with this person. Like this person's going to deeply appreciate the fact that you turned down their business and then sent them in the right direction. Like that is
Yeah.
a massive value add, and I think it shows that you have great intent and you're not trying to close them when it doesn't make sense. And so, like, we've gotten a lot of referrals from people that never ended up working with us as a result of just turning them down and saying, like, this is what we actually do. If you know anybody that wants to do this, let us know, but this is who you should talk to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, and then I assume that it's always just very Clay focused. You never explore other tools for infrastructure for these companies. It's always just implementing Clay, and then building these workflows around that.
So we actually use a fair amount of tools outside of Clay. Like our team's been super heavy in Claude Code for building front ends for some of our clients. I mean, we use N8N quite a bit, and then also for anyone who's used Clay enough, it's kind of a connector. So like, using Clay by itself doesn't really generate any tangible result. It has to connect to a sequencing tool or a CRM or a data warehouse. Oftentimes you have to get leads from somewhere. So like maybe you can't just use Clay's native lead finder. You maybe have to use a scraper. So, our team has to be pretty fluent in all the tech that connects to Clay as well. And if you're not, especially on the enterprise level, you're going to face a lot of problems. Like most enterprise companies have really complicated Salesforce instances, and they'll have resources you can ask about those complications. But if you don't know what questions to ask, it causes a lot of issues. Like if you forget to ask about like their hierarchy rules or their merge rules or their deduplication rules in their Salesforce or how they do lead routing, like all of these questions are pretty integral to the way you're going to be building clay tables, especially in the enterprise. And so it's really important to have at least a baseline understanding. Like I'm not a Salesforce expert by any means. Like I couldn't go into Salesforce, build workflows, etc. But you have at least have to know the relationship between Clay and Salesforce and what questions to ask clients.
Yeah, okay, very cool. And then, like, is there any ever a stage where, for example, you mentioned hierarchy rules or deduplication rules, but then at the same time, most of these enterprise companies admit that their CRM is filthy. Is there ever a time where you tell them, okay, this is a better way of doing this? Or do you always just go with what they're currently doing?
Yeah, totally. I think we try to limit our recommendations to things we're very confident in saying. Like,
Yeah,
you can have a hunch that somebody's like whatever merge rules are terrible, but if you don't know how to set them up yourself, then it's not really, in your purview to advise on it, right? So like, but on the other hand, like if their data is structured terribly, like if I import 100 Salesforce records into Clay and like their location isn't normalized and like emails aren't being validated, like this is within my purview. This is a thing I do every day. So then I can tell them like this is trash. We should probably fix it, or you should probably fix it. But like, this is going to cause a lot of issues when it comes to building automations, especially in the Clay end. So we try to be pretty strategic. I mean, I think most clients come to us because, we're not only just building the things in Clay, but we're telling them how we think they should be built, which I think is also
yeah,
helpful.
yeah. Okay, very cool. And then I think one question that everyone wants to ask is how do you justify a price for? I think I heard this before, on one of your podcasts or something that you charge $20,000 per month per engagement for some of these engagements. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but how do you justify that price? Is it
Yeah, it's a
just that
great
you're dealing
question.
with bigger companies, solving bigger problems? What is it?
Yeah, exactly. So there's, I guess, a few facets you have to take into account to be able to justify a price like that. The first is obviously that you're adding enough value to where $20,000 a month is a great investment for the company that's purchasing you. And oftentimes that value comes with scale. So like we could build two workflows that are very similar, one for a startup and then one for an enterprise company. The startup one will not be getting value for $20,000 a month. The enterprise company might be getting way more than they're paying for $20,000 a month, right? Like, some of our clients have 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 SDRs in their team. You build an automation that saves each of them 30 minutes a day. You're already making them so much efficiency. Like it's like insane how much money they're saving, right? So it's very justifiable to do it there. But then the next question that'll often be asked, even if you're able to justify the value, is like, okay, well, why can't I just go hire somebody internally to do this for cheaper, right? Like, an average GTM engineer maybe costs like if they're good, 150K a year, right? $20,000 a month, that's 240K a year. Why am I paying an extra $90,000 for your services? And the answer is often a couple things. The first is that we have this. I think an agency should be seen as a collective aggregate of knowledge across like 20 or
Yeah,
30 people, right? So if you hire one person, they're not a subject matter expert on everything an agency has. So there's like almost this collective knowledge that is difficult to be found in hiring like an IC. The second thing is that GTM engineers are really hard to find and hire. Like you could spend, 4 to 5 months doing a hiring process and then interviewing them, and you don't even know what questions to ask them. And then if you do hire them, they suck. You have to find a new one. Like, and this slows down like the process essentially, right? So like most of these companies want to move fast, especially these like fast growing AI businesses, and they'd much prefer to just bring on somebody. They don't really care about the money half the time. Like, not saying they don't care about it, but like if they have two options. One of them is start in 6 months and it's going to cost like $50,000 less, or start right now and know it's going to be done properly and it's going to cost you $50,000 more. Most companies will pay the extra money, especially on the enterprise level. And
yeah,
so, like saying, hey, we can start tomorrow. We have a collective aggregate of really smart people, and we can get things done probably faster than your average go-to-market engineer. All of those things combined can pretty quickly justify the price. And I actually think in many cases we're undercharging for the value that we have. Like, we have never had a great um, like pricing, exercise or model. Like we've just been continuously increasing pricing as demand increases and as we think we're adding more value. So it's not, I actually think, a lot of companies would probably be willing to pay more than 20.
well, very, very cool. But ultimately, it's on the buyer side. Like the workflows you're building are probably better suited to scale and are more. I'm sure there's more security stuff involved. But ultimately, it is the same work that you're delivering, is it? It's not like you're building 200 different clay tables for them, or are
Are
you in
you saying
some
like,
cases?
sorry, are you saying like could you like rephrase the question? Sorry, I'm just a bit confused by it.
Yeah. For example, if you were to build a table for one of those startup companies at the beginning of this journey, and you were charging $300 an hour or whatever it was, um, would you now at this stage charge $20,000 for that same level of work? Is it a different level of work or is it just a different buyer?
I would say actually both. So like the tables we're making for startups are far less complicated because they have no systems already installed in their business. Like
Yeah,
when you're working with an enterprise company, you're working with sometimes decades of pre-built systems that you're having to deal with because it's an integral part of their go-to-market org. When you're starting with a startup, they have literally nothing. So you can pretty much just tell them, we're going to do this, just like let us do it. It's the right thing to do, and it takes no time. So like there is a fundamental difference in the actual work that we're doing and also the complexity and the nature of the work we're doing. So I think there's a big difference in the work. And then also the buyer, of course, is different. Like, we're still an agency. We still want to maximize the amount of money we're making, especially for the input we're taking in. So like if we feel that a company is extracting a lot more value from the work that we're doing and they're willing to pay it, then of course it's something we're interested in trying to charge. But by no means do I think we're fleecing our customers. I actually think they're probably underpaying in many cases.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, there are all the questions I could come up with. Does anyone else have any questions for Patrick while we have him? Okay, Mohammed, go ahead. Hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah, you are, you are. Radan, I hope I'm saying it right as well. Well, thank you, Patrick. I think we met in Amsterdam when you came with
Yeah, totally.
Room. Yeah, I just have a question. So you talk a lot about being good, obviously. This is makes sense, like to be good at the tool itself. But at the start, did you ever have to kind of fake it till you make it to an extent where a client asks for something and you're not completely sure how to do it, but you're kind of learning on the job, so so that you can at some point be very fluent at it, you know?
Kind of, yes. I would say that like I would never say we can 100% do this if I didn't think we could do it. But I often remember on like early sales calls just being like, because a lot of times when you're working with startups, especially like, when you're working with enterprise companies, you better know how to do this and have done it several times. When you're working with startups, there were several times on a call I was like, I've never done this, but I'm super sure I can do it.
Yeah.
Like, and like it's being pretty honest. It's like saying like, I know the tools well enough to know that I could probably build this out for you, but I've never done it. But you know what? You're not paying $20,000 a month for me. At the time when I started the agency, we were $3,000 to $5,000 a month. So I'm like, hey, you're getting a pretty good deal if I have like a 99% assurance that I can do it. And also like anytime and there were like the edge cases where I said that and I couldn't do it, and I would just give them their money back and just move on. Like
Okay.
it's not, just don't take their money and scam them. Like, if you can't do the
Sure.
work, just give it back.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hey, thanks for the answer.
Yeah, no worries. Christian?
Yeah. Hey, Ruhan. Also, hope I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, hi, Patrick. I also met with you in Amsterdam. I'm also
Yeah,
part of
well,
the Netherlands Clay Club. Yeah. No, I had a question. Like, for example, imagine, I know it's probably hard to imagine since it's been like a minute now and Clay is such a big company, but what if we had to like completely start from scratch, let's say? Well, what would you do? Let's say tomorrow you need to start from scratch and build out the cone. How would you like acquire clients and just approach this whole thing?
yeah, so the primary way in which we acquire clients in the beginning was through content. I still think content's the best vessel for acquiring clients, and there's several reasons for this. The first is that it's just easily the cheapest distribution channel you can think of. Like it's even cheaper than outbound infrastructure. I mean, content's completely free. You can download a tool like Loom or Tela, record yourself building a clay table. It costs you zero money. The second is that it makes sales calls significantly easier. And so, like, if somebody's watched whatever 2 hours of your YouTube content and then they get on a call with you, you have fully built a parasocial relationship with this person and you've proven to them that you know what you're doing. And so, like, instead of having to reach out to somebody cold and explain everything to them, like you'll notice the calls from like cold outbound, while still great because you got a lead, they're definitely way more hostile than like somebody who's watched your content before. I mean, in the early days, I had several clients. Literally, I would get on a call with them. They would say, "I've watched all your content. I don't really like need to hear your pitch. Just like how much do you cost, and if I can afford you, I'll hire you." Like that's way better than having to do like the entire sales, discovery, presentation process, and So I'm a huge fan of content, and I think that's how I'd acquire clients. And then in terms of like how I'd build the agency, I really think at this point in the clay ecosystem, niching down is super important. And you can niche down in a variety of ways. Like you don't have to just niche down on the type of clay tables you're building. Well, some people do that. Like, Jacob Two Weiner has this agency called Sculpted and it just does CRM enrichment. You can go that direction. You can also niche down based on geography. You can also niche down on the type of companies you work with. I know somebody who does just recruiting and makes a ton of money doing clay builds for just recruiting agencies. So like you can niche down in a variety of ways, but I think ultimately, if a company is weighing out two agencies, one of them is a generalized clay agency, and then one of them is a clay agency just for X amount, whatever, for recruiting firms. They're going to pick the person who's more niche down for them on average. And so I would probably approach it by finding a niche. The last thing I'd say is like, it sounds so stupid and basic, but it's so true. Like, just don't optimize for immediate revenue gains. It's way better to just deliver an amazing service over time. The butterfly effect of doing that is so much better than building a churn and burn business. Like, I really think one of the key things we did that really ended up paying off in the end was we could have grown our revenue significantly more than we did. Like, we optimized so heavily for hiring like the most cracked possible people and giving the best possible service. And then we didn't really care about anything else. Like, we had very, very minimal systems, even by the time we'd gotten acquired, like outside of just like the basic stuff we had to do to make our client happy. Right. And I think that actually ended up adding a lot of value down the line because it made us, it built a reputation for us ultimately. So long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, no, very helpful. And then also just like a quick one in terms of that. And would you say then the Kiln just focus on enterprise? Is that kind of the niche that you guys are uh, operating in?
Yeah, I think we're now at the point where like when we started, we didn't need a niche down because there was no clay agencies. There were like two to three. And so in the beginning, we didn't have a niche. Now I would say, yeah, we probably are like, we see ourselves as like kind of the analogy we often use is the Rolls Royce of clay agencies, which is a Rolls Royce is very expensive, but if you can afford it, it's probably worth the money because it's a great car, right? Like that's kind of how we see ourselves. Like we're pitching ourselves to large enterprise customers who, and they require enterprise infrastructure. And there's not a lot of agencies in the clay space that actually have the like background, case studies, and infrastructure to work with enterprise businesses. So I guess our niche now would be technically enterprise, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fire. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Andrew?
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for that. Really enjoyed that. Listened to the podcast and the GTM Engineer podcast. I think we're talking about Eric and saying, "What? Stop posting all this stuff. Like, stop giving me the good stuff for free." So that was really interesting. But I wanted to ask, and obviously, I know you'll be neck deep in NDAs, etc. But could you give us a kind of insight into how that like acquisition? Because I've got slight background in M&A. I'm just interested like how that came about. What was the process like? Did you does it a long process? Do you go through like all the due diligence? What can you say without also giving away too much?
Totally. Yeah. So the intro to 2X was made actually through one of our clients, which harkens back to just focus on crushing it thing. But like we had a client, Insight Partners, they're a private equity firm. We've been working with them for a while. And I think, and I think they think we were doing a really great job on the work that we were, implementing for them. I got introduced to one of their VPs who I got on a call with, and he was like, "Hey, like, I'm a huge fan of the business. I'm a huge fan of the way you guys are branding yourself and the work you're doing. One of our portfolio companies, I think, should buy you. Like, I frankly just think they should buy you. And I want to introduce you to the CEO of the Portco." And it was, of course, 2X. And then the relationship kind of built from there. So it was kind of an organic introduction. And we'd actually gotten, we'd been approached to get acquired several times by a bunch of different types of companies. And it just didn't really feel right in a lot of those meetings. Either the numbers weren't right or the better together story wasn't right. But like for whatever reason, it didn't feel like a great deal. And then we were chatting with the 2X team, and they had a really convincing better together story, and they had a sound offer, and it just felt like overall they were serious about working with us and creating value. And to us, a lot of the value add was in the enterprise infrastructure thing. Like 2X has worked with some of the largest companies in the world, and they have all of the systems and permissions and security clearances required to work with really big enterprise businesses. And our goal was to just work with the biggest and most exciting companies in the world. And so it made sense to kind of combine forces. And the process itself, I was obviously very new to it. I've never sold a business before. So it was super interesting to go through. There's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of accountants, there's a lot of due diligence and a lot of negotiation. Like it's the devil's in the details of these with these acquisitions. The different terms in the acquisitions, stuff you never even thought about becomes very trivial and very stressful. And you're getting on calls with your lawyer and you're saying, what should I do? I don't know how to handle this. And then he gives you advice and you go back and forth with accountants. And so it took several months to close it. Obviously it was tough because you have to also run the agency, continue growing the agency, also do this at the same time. So it was not a fun few months. But obviously when it closed out, it was like, okay, it's finally done. And it was a very interesting process. And frankly, I can't really compare it to any other M&A processes because again, I've never been a part of any others.
Yeah. Everyone, do you mind a quick follow-up question on that? Because I actually met last week with a partner, a private equity fund, and he wants me to talk to one of their portfolio companies. But again, he's I don't know what Clay is. Sounds cool. And the sales team, like they're yellow pages, looking for things, phoning people up. How would you position that? Obviously, the PE company want growth, the Portco doing an old-fashioned sales process. How do you kind of avoid, like I said, just pitching results and then don't mention the tools? The tools kind of lead that to that, or do you show Clay?
So the first thing I'd say is like these PE relationships can be huge. Like I think they're super important. They were the catalyst for a lot of our growth because essentially you crush it for one of their portcos, they'll just
Yeah.
put you on all the other ones, which has been, awesome for our business's growth. Um, yeah, I think it depends on the sort of businesses that you're working with. And something I always ask somebody in a PE firm is like, do you have any companies that are actively using tools like Clay? Oftentimes, the ones that are already using it are the best ones to start with for a pilot. Because ultimately, with any of these PE companies, they're going to want you to pilot on one of their portcos.
Yeah.
And we always try to get to that pilot point because our whole idea is like, even if we have to charge a little less and like, we just need to work with this first company and then we'll prove that we're great. And then hopefully this PE firm has it in the system. They start making recommendations and then it kind of like scales from there. So we try to find the company that's using Clay already because they already know what Clay is. And it's a lot easier to describe your value prop to them. The more you have to extrapolate the value you're adding to companies, the harder it is to close them. And so like if they already are using Clay, try to find them, pitch it to them. And then I literally whatever they want to do from a pilot structure standpoint, we'll probably do. Like if they want to do like a 3-week project, we'll do that. If they want to do a 3-month engagement on like a retainer, we'll do that. The idea is just build a relationship. And we have a lot of strategic clients that were like that, where we probably could have charged them more. We probably could have replaced them with a client that paid more. But obviously, there was like a massive upside and tangible value to working with them.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Jagdeep, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, it's Jag. Nice to meet you. I run the EMEA practice for Go Nimbly. Go Nimbly are a RevOps consultancy, and
Very
I think you
familiar
know.
with Go Nimbly. Jen's a close friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Jen. I worked with her for many years at a company called Blue Wolf, and then she asked me to sort of jump on board and grow our EMEA practice here. A big part of that is obviously we're a significant Clay partner, and that's a huge growth lever for me in this region. I what resonates with me is hiring good talent. It's really tough to find good quality people that want to join an agency that aren't starting their own agency. That's something that I'm finding is quite common at the moment. I'd be curious to understand, like, from your experience, how have you found dealing with the European market as opposed to the US market? Do you do a lot of business in Europe, or is that sort of not a growth sort of region for you?
Yeah, so we do some business in Europe. It's not a massive part of our portfolio, but ultimately we just go where the cool companies are. So like if an exciting company from Europe wants to work with us, we'll work with them. So we have a few clients based there. Obviously, there are some restrictions to working with them, like data privacy laws that always make it tough, and we always have to like train our team to adapt to that. But we have team members in Europe, and we usually place them, of course, on the European clients that we have. In terms of hiring talent, it's the biggest bottleneck in this business. I truly believe that. Like finding really great people and then convincing them to join your company is like the hardest possible thing. The thing we've really tried to do is just meet them in the middle. Like a lot of these people want to, tinker around, start their own thing, like maybe even have some clients on the side. And we're like, listen, if you're so cracked, like if you're working for us and doing the work that we give you and you're finishing it, you'll have a great base salary and you can go do whatever you want outside of that. As long as you're not directly competing with us, we don't, ultimately care. And so
Mm.
our goal is just to be as lenient as possible, then also just build a culture that's exciting. Like the thing that usually gets people excited to join our team is I just tell them, like, we have a bunch of really, really good people on our team. They're super smart and they all have knowledge in their own respective domains. If anything, this is a learning experience for you. Like almost everybody we've hired could get paid significantly more elsewhere. So like we really have to
Hmm.
kind of focus on the intangibles and just be like, while this might not be, the whatever $500,000 a year job you're looking for, at the
Mm.
end of the day, you're going to learn a lot. I think we're a great incubator for becoming a go-to-market engineer elsewhere, maybe at another company, maybe starting your own firm. And we try to build like a pedigree that makes people excited to join us. Like most of our team members who have left, actually all of them have went and joined incredible companies making a lot of money as go-to-market engineers or principal GTMEs or whatever. And so like, if anybody wants to like jumpstart their career, I think it's a good place to do it. Or if they want to make a career pivot, like we have some people that were software engineers, they want to be go-to-market engineers, and we're like, listen, this is the place to make the pivot. So yeah, a lot of focusing on the intangibles. Otherwise, it's hard to convince smart people to join unless you're paying them like 250K a year.
Yeah, I hear that. Thanks.
One thing I would probably add to that, Patrick, I'm nowhere near your level now, but one person that I've used quite a lot to hire go-to-market engineers, and it's been fantastic experience, is somebody called Naomi. I'm not sure if she's in this call, but she's a headhunter for go-to-market engineering talent. Um, Anybody who's looking for go-to-market talent, I really would recommend reaching out to her.
Stop telling
Um,
people. It's going to be harder now.
so yeah, sure.
Keep it
But
secret. I was actually.
she really is good. No affiliation with her, just genuinely, it's been a pleasure working with her. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
Love
totally. And
that.
then it's also maybe one thing I'd add is you can either, like buy a go-to-market engineer or train one up. Like those are your two options pretty much. Obviously buying one just like who's already very good and just being like it's going to be more expensive, but it's going to be a lot easier to just get them started on work. And then you can also just find somebody who's in a different type of role for deployed engineer, whatever it is, and train them up on becoming one, which I found is a lot more sustainable a model, at least until the talent market catches up.
Yeah, we're putting a huge amount of emphasis and investment in growing the talent internally. Um, and Clay has an amazing amount of resources, especially over the last few months, to be able to sort of support quite a lot in that. And yeah, I think that's got to be the way forward for us,
Yeah,
which is
agreed
very exciting.
for sure. Anna?
Yeah, I'm kind of connecting to that one because it's like was one of my questions actually. I'm currently in the process of trying to figure out whether to go on to my own or to actually figure out whether to go and work for somebody else. I do have a lot of work experience mixed over the years. I'm not a youngster, which is what normally is lately that I'm seeing. So it's when speaking with me, Naomi, she mentioned to me like you actually have all the studies to go and start your own thing, but at the same time, obviously, I am a mom and with different responsibilities. So there's like at one point you kind of gotta be wondering which one kind of makes more sense. And I'm in the process of currently evaluating. What do you think I should? I don't know. It's just like you don't know me. You have no idea. You just met me, but
Yeah, I can kind of
yeah.
talk you through like the heuristics of like I guess how you should go about thinking about I think the decision at least. So like if you go out on your own, obviously there's significantly more upside than getting a job somewhere. Like, if you start your own agency, eventually maybe you can grow it, you can, sell it to somebody else. That would be like, I guess the idea. I mean, that's at least what I was trying to do. And so, there's a lot of upside potential, but it also takes a massive lifestyle hit. Like, I mean, for the, 2.5 years I was running the agency, like it's 12 to 16-hour days. Like you're not getting a lot of sleep. It's a very, very stressful experience. And you also have like a lot of other people relying on you. Like the thing about a job is you can quit it. You can't really just quit a company. At least like if you do, it's pretty frowned upon because you have a lot of people relying on you. We had like 30 people on our team. If Matthias and I decided to just up and leave, 30 people are now unemployed, right? I guess it's a little different now that we've gotten bought, but you get the general idea. So like, it's a massive responsibility. It takes a ton of time and it's very stressful. If you get and also like, I don't know if I'd recommend it if you don't feel like, very secure in your ability to do things like, Clay, N8N, et cetera. Like from a skill basis, it's always worth kind of mastering, I think, the ability before starting an agency surrounding it. It'll just cause a lot of problems as you're trying to learn and also implement for clients. It's not a good combination. And then on the flip side, getting a role at a company is incredible for learning. It's a lot more stable. There's a lot more work-life balance. Like I try to make sure that nobody in our team is ever overworking. Like, I'm very like I recognize the fact that they are working a job. They are not running a company. They should be able to spend time with their family. They should be able to clock in at 9 and leave at 5 most days. So like there's just a lot more like work-life balance, stability, and you can also learn a lot. And like the whole idea is like if you get a job at a company, you could always at any point just leave and start your own thing. Like it doesn't, it doesn't need to happen immediately. And it can happen organically too. Like if you just have a job and you're doing outreach to other companies and doing freelancing, maybe the freelancing gets good enough to where you can just leave and then you don't have to kind of deal with like the weird interim period where you're not making any money and you don't have a job, which is what I did and it wasn't fun. So like I would recommend, maybe being a little bit more heating with caution than I was.
Thank you for that one. It's like it like you mentioned, it's like it's one of the things that obviously it's on my mind, which is the reason why I was like, I always want to be talking to other people in order to also get their opinions. The other question that I had is this is like, I think it's like lately what I'm seeing is constant, it's probably just my feed, in which I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. I got bombarded with everything from right and left, with everything that has to be doing with GTM. And part of me, I know that I'm probably living completely in a bubble in which it's all with this information about this, but is everybody just knowing about clay, or there are still companies that have no idea what in the world it actually is? and 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 there is actually a lot of market still out there that has not been tapped, in your opinion. Now, you obviously are concentrating on enterprise because that's your goal right now, but that will not be me starting, you know what I mean? Mine will be more business to business because that's where I come from, but more on a smaller scale, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of greenfield with clay. Like, I think a lot of companies haven't heard of it, especially on the enterprise, actually, which is why we're kind of going that direction. Like, you'd be so shocked. I feel like we all kind of live in a bubble. Like, people actually haven't heard of clay. Like, most people have not heard of clay or know what it does or know how exciting it is. And even people in B2B or even in sales still have not heard of it. Like, and even though they're worth $5 billion, like, there's a reason these VCs are still investing in them. And it's because they're betting on the fact that clay has a lot more greenfield that they haven't signed. So yeah, all that to say, I really do think that there's still a massive opportunity. I also think, like, there are a lot of clay agencies out there, obviously, but like there's also a massive skill divide and, like, maturity divide. It's not like it's actually that saturated. Like, there are a lot of clay agencies, but how many of them are actually able to work with large enterprise businesses or even like work in certain disciplines, industries? It gets a lot smaller when you narrow it down. So, still a lot of greenfield for sure.
When I see Sam had asked the next question that I actually wanted to ask, so I'm taking advantage of it. What do you screen for in hiring for GTME? Like, if I were to figure out and sending out a Loom video somewhere, it's like what would be something that you guys are looking for?
So we look for like a variety of different things, but I'd say a lot of the intangibles we look for, because a lot of our hiring honestly is very vibes based, is like, are you super curious, super high energy, and great at communication? That's a great combination of things. Like, because if you're curious, you're going to learn all these new tools. You're going to show our team all these new tools. You're going to be able to do a demo on our all hands showing whatever new Claude Code thing you've like worked on that week. That's really exciting. Like, our whole team is constantly trying to learn. That's the whole reason they're working for our company, most likely. And it also just makes us kind of top of our game. High energy is great because most clients want to, we want our clients to be excited to get on calls with us. Like, it's like, I honestly think a lot of the professional services experience is just like, do I enjoy working with this person or not? Like, obviously, if somebody's good, but they suck, you'll probably still work with them, but like pretty reluctantly. And if you find somebody better, you're going to replace them. There's a lot of leeway that can be made by just being like a fun to talk to person. So if I enjoy talking to them, I usually see that as a huge signal. And then the last thing is just, what was the last thing? I had three things. Anyway, and then on the technical side, they have to be pretty technical, or I have to be at least have the capacity to be technical. Like, I got on an interview with a guy who ended up hiring recently. He was in college. He was a computer science student. He'd never heard of clay in his life. And I found him and sought him out and DM'd him because I was like, this guy's so good. I know he had seen one of my videos and he DM'd me, but he had no idea what clay was. And so I got on a call with him and I immediately recognized, like, this guy's so technical. He'll learn clay in 3 days. Like, this is not going to be hard for him. He's very smart. Like, and so I literally gave him our clay account and I said, go work on this for a few days. Tell me when you've learned clay and I'm going to hire you. And then he learned clay in a few days. I hired him. So I don't know, just like generally being like smart, being able to navigate tools like clay, is kind of what we look for. And honestly, there's not like a laundry list of technical ability you need to have. Like, we don't have like a formal checklist. I just feel like I have a decent intuition now for who's going to end up being a good GTM engineer. Like, do I enjoy talking to them? Are they curious? And are they smart? Are they high energy? All those things I think are kind of what we look for. So kind of not a great answer. I don't have a checklist for you, but it is what we look for from like a baseline. Cool. Andrew.
Yeah, great. So I launched my own agency a couple of months ago, and it's been very lucky. It's been going well. I'm at currently that point where clients are getting, like, people coming through the door. Clients want to get involved, but as someone who's doing it themselves, you then end up wearing the hats of trying to do your own bound, manage clients, and you feel like you're wearing the days needs to be 30 hours long. When you scaled up, how did you move from delivering to actually overseeing? Because like that's still gonna, it's your baby. You don't want to trust something like, no, they might mess it up. How do you get past that so you can then focus back to being agency, like dealing with accountants and all that crap?
Yeah. So there was a really, really long time where we just did both. Like we were just working literally all day and not sleeping, and it was horrible. And I think it actually is just a necessary evil in the beginning of the business, unless you're willing to like, pretty much use all of your profits to very quickly hire management, which I didn't think was, it was pretty massive risk. So I didn't end up doing that. But I think you don't really feel like you get out of client delivery until you've hired at least like a client service manager and then like a layer of management above them. Until you get to that point, I think it's pretty tough. Like, because you're always going to be like pretty much your manager for your go-to-market engineers until you have another layer of management. So like, our business is structured so we have two people working on like the client-facing work, and then we have a manager overseeing them, and then there's like my co-founder and I who are kind of overseeing the managers, right? And like then it's finally gotten to the point where I feel like I'm not day to day doing a lot of client work. And even then, we'll have a client that like, needs something done really quickly, and nobody has bandwidth, and I'm still getting in the weeds and building stuff in Clay. Like it's not like it ever goes away, but we hired management primarily to just free up time for us to work on like some of the larger business activities, like building partnerships, making content, all that good stuff. So it's something I think you have to hire your way out of essentially.
But when was that point where you hired your first GTM engineer or your first like maybe subcontractor? Was it a number of clients? Was it a revenue thing, or was it just kind of this feels right?
Ours was a revenue thing. So like we pretty much had to think to ourselves, we have to be making enough money to pay for me, my co-founder Matthias, and then obviously the person we're hiring, and then cover all business expenses, and then still have a little bit of money left. So like I think Matthias came on full time when we were at like 20K in MRR. I think we hired our first person probably at like 30 or 40K in MRR, which kind of covered everything. And then after that, we kind of just continued hiring kind of at like warp speed after that. And that's how we got to as many people as we have now. So I'm obviously part of it's field based, not like we had a number, but it was kind of like, okay, if we do some napkin math here, we can probably pay for everybody. And also like the nature of your clients is important. Like, are they going to stay for the next 3 or 4 months? Because if they all churn, then you're just holding
Yeah.
them back, right? So there's that question. But yeah, that's kind of how we approached hiring. And then our first person we hired was our team member Ankit, who's still with us, and he's incredible. And he was like maybe not a client-facing go-to-market engineer, but was building a lot of clay tables for us. And then we hired our first like US-based person shortly after hiring Ankit, and then he was like our first kind of formal go-to-market engineer. And then we ended up hiring our first middle manager after hiring like 6 or 7 go-to-market engineers. I think it was to the point where we had so many direct reports that we had no time to do anything else, and we're like, we need to hire management, pretty much.
Cool. That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Cool.
Now, I think there might be a few questions in the chat. So Mohammed asked, what kind of content? I think that was when you were talking about recommended content as the client acquisition method.
Yeah, so I mean the short answer is whatever content your ICP will watch, but like I mean I was optimizing pretty much exclusively for impressions, and I didn't even really care at the time who the impressions were. Like I just wanted pretty much anybody who was interested in clay or maybe who had never even heard of clay to see my content. And I don't know, like I've talked about this before on like previous like talks or podcasts, but I had Eric Nowoslawski, who was like kind of my mentor in the beginning. He pretty much just told me make content that adds so much value that like people have to watch it essentially. Like it doesn't actually have to be super well edited, but if you make a Loom video and that Loom video just has like free sauce in it for an hour and a half or whatever, like people are gonna probably watch it. And of course the algorithm will do its thing. So like I am kind of a proponent of the algorithm works as it's supposed to work. If you make content that's value adding and engaging and people want to listen to you, it'll get pushed out to other people. Obviously, there are a few kind of hacks you can do on things like LinkedIn where you get people to, comment for lead magnets and all that good stuff. And it does work. But, at a baseline, if you just make valuable content over and over on a daily basis, it's super helpful, especially on the LinkedIn algorithm. Consistency is super important for LinkedIn. Like if you post a few times a week, every week, LinkedIn will actually just naturally increase your engagement. So it's really important to continuously post. If you just post one time, then wait 2 months and post again, unless it's a really banger post, it's probably not going to get pushed that hard.
And then Bill is asking, how do you typically use Claude Code for clients?
So it depends on the client, as you can imagine. And what's up, Bill? Nice seeing you. But like, as you can imagine, like most of our enterprise clients can't just let us like spin up a thing in Claude Code and deploy it for them. Like there are a million security reasons why they cannot do that. And so first of all, it depends on the nature of the client, but with startups, it's a really great way to easily make front ends for a lot of the systems we have. So like a random example of this is if we let's say we build like a inbound lead scoring system for SDRs. We don't want them to go in Clay and actually use the table itself. So we'll build, and you can do this with like Lovable and stuff too. You can build a very basic front end to where they can like submit maybe a LinkedIn profile. It goes to the Clay workflow and then brings all of the information back in a payload and then displays it in like a very clean way. And it just makes sales team members a lot more effective because I don't want them in Clay. Like they might ruin the table. I prefer they submit it through this front end and then the data comes back to them kind of magically. Another reason we'll use Claude Code is to build something, again, mostly for startup clients that replaces the really basic software they have or solves a problem for them. So like a great example of this is one of our clients, startup company. They were like a fast growing AI company. They had no really security measures, which was great. Like where you had to like, get anything approved. And they were using ZoomInfo and they were paying ZoomInfo like $200,000 a year or something. And the only function of ZoomInfo they were using was the Chrome extension where you could go on somebody's LinkedIn, click on them, and like get like their email and their phone number. And then one of my team members was like, he was like a software engineer who turned into a GTM engineer. He's like, I can just build this. Like, this is so easy to build, and we can use better data because we have Clay. And so he just rebuilt the Chrome extension. I don't even know if he used Claude Code for this. He might have just like developed it himself. But the idea is you could use Claude Code to build it, and then just saved them like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is great because it pays for us for many, many months, many years, I guess, with their rates. So like it ends up being yeah, a really quick win.
Very cool. Just before we move on to you, Christian, Abdul asked, how do we break through market saturation and fierce competition to shift from a constant state of hunting to a rhythm of sustainable growth and fierce client retention?
I think the only way to really like break yourself out in the market is just continuously deliver good service to the point where you have so much inbound that you don't really need to care about competition. Like almost all of our inbound clients now aren't even from content. I think content helps, but it's actually mostly referrals and partnerships. And so like we have enough clients that we've worked with at this point where they just, refer us to other people and say, hey, they do great work. You should work with them. And then at that point, we're mostly concerned about just hiring more people. Like we're actually not that concerned about like, competing with other agencies. Every agency has their own nuances and benefits and detriments, and there's not much of a reason to focus on them. I really, obviously it's very basic and generic, but like I don't think focusing on competition is very helpful in a lot of cases, unless they're doing something that you want to replicate or think is really inspiring. So yeah. And also I have a hard stop. So if there's like a last question, happy to answer, but I actually have to have another meeting, unfortunately.
Yeah, no,
Christian, do you
no,
have a
all
question?
good. Then my question wasn't like that fast at all, so it's
No
fine.
worries.
Thank you
Feel
so
free to
much
just
for
shoot me a
sharing.
DM like on LinkedIn and I can answer it as
Yeah,
well. Happy to help.
fire.
But yeah, that's
Okay.
cool.
Much appreciated, Patrick. This has been amazing. I think everyone agrees. Thank you very much for coming on.
No worries. It was awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
Big time.
Go
Thank
on.
All
you.
right, cool.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Yo, Ruhan, thank you for bringing Patrick in.
You're very, very welcome.
Yeah. If I could ask you, are you
That was
still in
great.
uni?
Sorry, just want to say thanks. That was really great. Thanks, Ron.
You're very welcome, Heather.
Bye.
Sorry, what were you asking, Christian?
I was
Was
wondering,
it
are you still in
Christian, yeah?
uni? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still in university. So I'm studying
Oh,
engineering
okay.
alongside my agency.
Engineering? Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Well, what kind of engineering?
It's complicated. In Ireland, we have this thing called undenominated for the first year. So I don't actually choose my denomination until the
Okay, yeah,
second
no, I
year.
know what you mean. Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's fire.
So it's like
And then I
general
also,
engineering.
yeah. Then I also saw that you're a Clay Club lead for whole Europe
Yeah.
community.
Are you in that
Yeah.
group? No?
Hmm?
Are you in the group?
No, I don't think so. I'm only in the group for the Clay in the Netherlands, but I'm not
Okay,
sure
yeah,
about.
shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. Do you have my LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, shoot me
Um,
your WhatsApp number and I'll add you. You're
okay,
more than
fine.
welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, super cool, man. Thank you. Thank you for bringing the legend, bro. Again, I'm gonna DM him.
You're very welcome.
Yeah,
All right,
okay,
cool. Have a great
cool.
day.
You too, man.